50K training program speaker series, speaker number 2. However, you don't need to be training for anything to be here and enjoy learning from Kristen Chang, who is incredibly prepared, has brought lots of visual aids as well as snacks for later to test. We're going to be taping this for folks who couldn't get here tonight, and we're also on Facebook Live. So you might want to, just be aware of that. Looking forward, after tonight, we're going to have our third speaker on Wednesday, April 5th. Dr. David Horton is going to come and talk about preparing for your first ultra, which for many people will be promised land 50K plus, but for others, I know there are folks in the room who are doing other races. So pencil that in, Wednesday, April 5th, the first Wednesday in April. So I don't know if John has a few things to say before Kristen starts, but we'll get going. And we're going to go for about an hour, right, with Q&A? Hopefully. Great. Okay.
Perfect. So Kristen Chang, I'm going to say, because Michelle is here somewhere, I know Michelle has...
I'm right here.
Has worked personally, and I know you're not going to be as good at doing this, so I also want to, while you're here, promote you, and just the fact that you have these great food snacks you've made back there, and she's got cards, and I know Kristen, if anyone's interested in nutritional coaching, consulting, whether you're just doing Couch to 5K or Ultra Marathon, she is a great resource for that, and it's something that a lot of us don't really think about, which is a big reason why, we have her here tonight to think about that. So, for anyone who is interested, she's for hire, and no, I think it's a good resource to consider, and I think you'll see a lot of the presentation tonight. And Kristen has run Promised Land as well as many other ultras, and is mostly a triathlete, and has done a ton of really great big endurance races. So she totally gets where nutrition plays into all this, because she's like an knucklehead like the rest of us and wants to go and push it really far. So it's really good when you have someone who's very knowledgeable but also is very talented and competitive and works hard. So anyway, thank you for being here from Blacksburg, Virginia.
Thank you.
Kristen Chang.
I should also add that I may be knowledgeable and competitive and all that, but I've also probably made every mistake in the book when it comes to like race day fueling and day-to-day fueling as well. So I've learned from my own experiences. Hopefully you can learn from some of my mistakes that I've made as well. I'm prepared because I decided to use this as an opportunity to pick up groceries for the week. So thank you for motivating me to restock our fridge. For those of you who know my husband Jordan, he's also an ultra runner, so you can imagine that food flies out of our kitchen very quickly. But I was nice and left him some of the muffins for him to eat for dinner tonight. So, all right. So let's make sure I can. Okay. All right. So I guess my pictures about me are not coming up. So there were some pictures, but that's okay because you can see me. I'm right here. So a little bit about myself. I'm a registered dietitian nutritionist. In terms of what I do day to day, I own my own private practice at Real Food for Fuel. I started that about 2 years ago because I was just really passionate about sports nutrition, but also I had this growing passion for helping others to adequately fuel their body and nourish their body when it comes to not only performing at their best, but also just achieving that optimal, healthy lifestyle that a lot of us strive for. And health and performance is more than just what happens out in the race course. It's also how we feel day to day, energy-wise, mentally, physically. And so when I'm not teaching at Virginia Tech, I teach a class over there called Health Counseling. I work with clients one-on-one, helping them to develop either fueling strategies for that day-to-day, optimal, what to put in their bodies so that they can withstand hard training, but also race day nutrition, formulating ideal race day plans, navigating issues. I'm also trained as in medical nutrition therapy. I'm a dietitian, so I actually work with a lot of people on like navigating chronic health issues and how that interplays with racing and performance in that manner. So I guess we don't want to get to see pictures. So today is actually National Registered Dietitian Nutritionist Day. It's my favorite holiday of the year outside of Christmas. And like National Pancake Day, that's also a big holiday for me. But I'm really excited to be here celebrating with you guys. This is actually like one of my favorite things to do is to give free talks and talk about food. So thanks for having me. All right, so just a few things to kick off. I don't believe I'll be blocking the screen because I'm nice and short, but tell me if I do. I really just like this quote in terms of like an overarching theme, but many athletes think performance starts with training, but really it starts with fuel. And I really do believe that fuel, what you put in your body, is like that foundation that allows you to put in the training day in, day out, and work towards those performance goals. I also really like this quote by Christy Wellington, Ironman world champion 4 times. But I just like how she just simplifies this whole concept of fueling, because nutrition can really get very complicated if we think about it, or if we make it complicated, but it really does boil down to a few simple concepts that we want to keep in the back of our mind at all times. Keep it simple, eat natural foods as much as possible, balance input with output, and have everything in moderation. The other thing I really believe when it comes to fueling your body, it is about quality in, quality out. I talk a lot about like a car metaphor in terms of like you want your car to last for a really long time and run at its best, its engine run at its best. You're going to put quality fuel in it. You're going to keep up with the maintenance and repair, and treat it properly, treat it with respect in terms of getting the most mileage out of that car, getting the most out of that car. And the same goes with our bodies. We're asking a lot from ourselves as athletes. I know that because my coach kicks my butt all the time. And putting quality fuel in our body day in, day out, nourishing our bodies is really going to play a role in getting the most out of your workouts, getting the most out of your body when it comes to performance. The other big thing, point that I wanted to make before we kick off into the actual details of nutrition, I ran across this actually today as I was preparing, and I even printed it off because I decided this is my new favorite little quote. But to nourish is to flourish, and I know that there's like a lot of information floating around when it comes to like food and nutrition, what to eat, what not to eat. And it gets really confusing, and there's a lot of foods myths out there and a lot of misconceptions. And when it comes to just like the foundations, I really believe that, before you think about what to put in your body, how to eat, how much to eat, it really starts with just having a healthy and positive relationship with food. And coming back to thinking about treating your body with respect, and nourishing your body in that regard. I don't know how to get back on there. Let's see.
Here comes John.
Hopefully it'll stay on it for you. All right. Oh, there we go. Okay, cool. So when it comes to like those day-to-day choices in regards to nutrition, having a healthy relationship with food, having the desire to like really nourish our body, I think really simplifies a lot of the questions that cross our mind in terms of should I eat this, should I eat that, is this bad for me, is this not, there's the whole low carb, low fat, gluten-free, and I don't really prescribe to any one particular diet, but it really just boils down to whatever you decide to eat, make sure that you're doing it with positive intention. All right. So, in terms of daily fueling choices, there's, I guess, a little hard to see, but you've got 4 main categories. Pulling it out a little bit different than the food pyramid, but I think of fuel in 4 different categories. You got your hydro fuel, which is your fluids. your power fuel, which is your carbohydrate, your armor fuel, which is fruits and veggies and also healthy fats, and then rebuilding fuel, which is your protein. So I'm going to sort of break these down in terms of the role they play in the body and our performance. So hydro fuel, I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on that, but you can see here that our bodies are, a significant percentage made of water. So keeping up with daily hydration is going to play a big role in getting our bodies to function at their best. How many people have trouble keeping up with fluid needs, drinking enough water? So what are some of the obstacles that you face in that regard?
Bottles empty.
Bottles empty.
Yes,
So you get to refill it. Yeah. What else?
Drinking too much tea or other stuff.
Okay, drinking too much tea. I used to be like that. I used to drink coffee until like afternoon, and I'm like, oh, there's my water bottle. What else? What are other obstacles?
Bathroom breaks.
Bathroom breaks. Any like water? You don't like water? Yeah, it does get a little boring after a while. So, there are definitely a lot of challenges when it comes to drinking enough water. And while I'm not really big on like tracking calories, I am really big on tracking my fluid intake just because A, I'm really forgetful in that regard, and B, it actually motivates me to have a specific goal in terms of how much fluid I need to drink every day in, day out. And we really need more than we think in terms of, I think this bottle is 20 ounces. It's either 20 or 24. So the average individual needs 80 to 100 ounces of water per day. So that means I'm aiming for about 5 of these per day to keep up with my fluid needs. If I've only drank one by lunch, then I'm not really quite on track in keeping up with those goals. Who's ever seen a diagram like this one where you've got the various levels of hydration? I know at Mountain Masochist they have the beer colors, which is like my favorite little diagram. But in terms of monitoring your hydration status, it's not really rocket science. The simplest way to monitor whether you're hydrated or not is actually just to look at the color of your urine.
Yeah.
In terms of urine color and then also urine frequency. So if you're not really going a lot and it's really dark, that's a good sign that you need to drink more water. If you're in the clear, I would say, or like light yellow, you're aiming more for like the color of lemonade. Too clear too often could be a sign of overhydration. More is not always better when it comes to hydration either. So listen to your body in that respect. All right, so power fuel is going to be your carbohydrates, and so it's really good to come back, especially when I know there's a lot floating around in terms of like low carbohydrate this, train low, raise high, and thinking about like the role of carbohydrate in the athlete's diet. Just remembering that carbohydrates are the primary fuel for both our muscles and our brain, so we do need adequate carbohydrate day in, day out to optimally function. When it comes to immune health, if you're not getting enough carbohydrate, if you're constantly in a deficit, it's really going to impact your immune health. You're more likely to get sick. Your body's going to break down faster. Fiber is going to be helpful for promoting bowel health and satiety, so we're not getting hungry quite as often, which can help with calorie control, making sure that we're managing our weight. And the biggest thing in terms of like how much that I can say is it really depends on your daily training load. So in terms of managing how much is appropriate, really you want to look at your day and say, well, do I have a hard workout today? Do I have double workouts today? Or is this just a light day? Do I have off? And adjust how much you're taking in accordingly is really the best approach in terms of like periodizing carbohydrate intake. So rebuild fuel, this is your protein, and I think we all know that it helps us in building and repairing muscle fibers. Protein's also really key when it comes to supporting immune health, in that it helps to build a lot of antibodies, your white blood cells, your red blood cells that keep us healthy. Replaces red blood cells in terms of prevention of anemia. How many people know that, like, when it comes to post workout rebuilding your glycogen stores. We know we need carbohydrate, but who knew that you also need protein to build that glycogen? Yeah, so I heard this earlier today. So like protein and carbohydrate have this like perfect marriage in that they work together when it comes to both muscle resynthesis and also rebuilding of glycogen stores. So post-workout, and this will come up in a minute anyways, but carbohydrate alone is not going to be as optimal as pairing that carbohydrate with protein, because the protein is going to work with the carbohydrate to help rebuild that glycogen. And the biggest recommendation for protein is to just split it evenly, as evenly throughout the day as possible. So if you're not sure if you're eating enough protein, or if you're looking for a way to like improve upon your protein intake, look at your day, like look at breakfast, snack, lunch, and see if you have a quality protein source of each. If you do, you're doing good. By spreading it evenly throughout the day, it prevents our body from going into like this negative protein balance, which then causes our body to want to break down muscle. So by giving it evenly throughout the day, that's also going to help stabilize blood sugar levels so that we have that constant energy throughout the day too. Armor fuel. So this is actually my favorite category, but fruits and veggies, these are going to provide our essential nutrients, but they also help our bodies with dealing with stress. And you know, when you're in that peak training, you're putting your body under a lot of stress. That's part of the process of being an athlete, is that you're giving it that stimulus, working it hard, breaking it down so that it can rebuild back stronger. But we also need to make sure that we're getting the nutrients to support that rebuilding and regrowth. So your fruits and veggies are going to provide antioxidants, which are going to help promote recovery. And then healthy fats are going to also support immune health, but also hormone production that aids in recovery. And then they help to fight inflammation. So when we're training hard, we're creating like this inflammatory state in our body. That's part of the natural process. But the key is to make sure that we keep that inflammation in check. If we're not resting enough, if we're not getting enough quality fuels within our diet, that inflammation then starts to get out of hand, and then that's when we start getting sick and injured, and you're not really recovering, sluggish legs, and all that not so fun stuff. All right, and so anti-fuel, I'm not going to say a ton about this, but we all eat these foods, so don't look at me and think that I don't eat these foods either, because I love my cookies and chocolate, and even some good french fries and ice cream. But the key thing that I just want to say about this is, when consumed in excess, they are going to work to increase inflammation and stress on the body. They're also tend to be more empty calories. In terms of like overall weight management, it's really all about balance. In terms of, instead of taking the approach of like saying we should not eat these foods, I more say like emphasize the other foods that are going to give you more quality nutrition and give you more bang for your buck. But it's okay to sit back and enjoy these foods every once in a while. It's not going to kill us either. It's just more keeping in mind that if this is like the majority of your diet, or if you're consuming it in excess, you're really not going to recover quite as well as we're looking to, or feel quite as good as we'd like either. All right, so talking about recovery, these are some of the simple consequences of hard training. I know that it goes far beyond this, but when we're training hard, we're really at risk for dehydration, depleting our glycogen stores, breaking down muscle, cell damage, and inflammation. What am I missing? What are some of the other consequences that you guys have experienced while working hard?
Well, beyond the physical, I mean, there's certainly a mental, emotional, psychological impact when you're training really hard.
Mm-hmm. Right, mental, psychological, emotional impacts of working hard. What else? It really affects all areas of our health and our body. The key is just, that I want to point out, is that there are specific impacts on our health when it comes to training hard. But that doesn't mean that there aren't things that we can do to sort of work against like minimizing the impact of that hard training. So recovery is going to involve optimal time for mental and physical rest. There's multiple aspects. You know, repletion of foods and fluids is really just one part of it. I think the key thing I'm trying to make here is just a lot of people think of recovery, especially recovery nutrition, as like what you eat right after an exercise session. But really, I think something that really changed my perspective towards recovery nutrition is realizing that, well, for one, it's everything you eat from one workout to the next, not just right after a specific workout. And when you're really training hard, you really need to be in this constant state of working on recovery and utilizing nutrition accordingly. So it's really just a constant state of recovery. Like, we're in this constant need to work on recovery when we're working hard. So here's my question for you guys. What's the most important thing you can do to promote recovery?
Rest.
Sleep.
Sleep. Rest and sleep. Yes. Good. Good job. Good job. You guys passed. Okay. So sleep is really I can tell you all about food, but really the first thing you need to do, make sure you're getting enough sleep. Please don't stay up and deprive yourself of sleep just because you're preparing food. Sleep is what is going to help our body really rebuild and repair itself. That's when your body recharges its batteries. That's when your body produces human growth hormone, which helps it to repair, and that has widespread effects on our ability to truly recover from these workouts day in, day out, and also on just our day-to-day, like general health and well-being. The other thing I was telling some students I was working with last week is that sleep, when we're not getting enough sleep day in, day out, it also impacts the choices that we make nutrition-wise day in, day out. So if we're not getting enough sleep, we're probably not going to be making the best nutrition choices either throughout the day, because lack of sleep affects like certain appetite hormones, and just in general, when we're deprived of sleep, we don't make the best choices food-wise. And so not getting enough sleep is really going to have wide-sweeping effects. I do like that rest was pointed out as well, because no matter how well you eat, you still need to rest and give your body the appropriate rest from training in order to really reap the benefits of that training as well. So these are the 5 R's of recovery and nutrition. We've already covered rest, but I think this is really helpful in just remembering. So rehydrate, replenish, repair, and reinforce. It's actually the same categories as what we mentioned earlier, just a little bit different. So I'm going to talk about them though in terms of recovery. Successful training and recovery is only going to occur when proper nutritional planning, with proper nutritional planning. So the biggest obstacle I've personally encountered when it comes to making sure that I'm eating well and making sure that I'm getting in proper recovery nutrition is really not knowing. It's not about knowing what to eat. It's more about planning ahead. In terms of making sure that I have the right fuel available and with me on hand to consume at the right time. So that means day in, day out, making sure I'm carrying food when I'm working and driving all about, because I actually do a fair amount of driving here and there. I'm not end up skipping meals or skipping a snack. But then also, like, if I'm doing a workout somewhere, and a lot of you guys drive out to the trails to eat, to run. You do eat while you're out there too, but. And sometimes it's like we can drive a full hour or more to get to our location of where we're doing a run. So if you finish that run, then you have to drive another hour back. By the time you get home, you're probably ravenous, but you've also missed that entire like optimal refueling window when it comes to really getting the most out of our recovery. So planning can really go a long ways when it comes to successful like recovery and refueling. So when it comes to rehydrating, of course we do that with fluids and electrolytes. In terms of how to really know how much you should drink to replenish like fluid loss, the best thing to do is to do like this thing called pre and post workout weighing. So you weigh yourself before you start your run, you weigh yourself after. Well, there's only one problem with that. Probably if you're doing a trail run, most people don't carry a scale with them. Unless you're running from home, this is a really hard principle to apply. I will tell you that. And so the guideline is to consume 16 to 24 ounces of fluid per 1 pound weight loss. So what I will say about this is it's not a bad idea, especially as the temperature gets warmer, to do a few runs from home where you do weigh yourself before and after and get an idea of what your personal sweat rate is, so that as like day in, day out, but especially as the temperature gets warmer and we're sweating a lot harder, you have an idea of how much sweat you're losing per hour of training. So when you do get home, you can work towards adequately replenishing. The biggest thing in terms of like post-workout rehydration, make sure you're including some source of electrolyte with that, because you do lose electrolytes when you're sweating. And especially if you didn't get enough in during the workout, it's really important to make sure you get enough after. But including a quality source of sodium, whether that's in your drink as like a sports drink, or you can just have like a salty snack after a workout, is going to actually help you to hold on to the fluids that you are consuming. Who does back-to-back longer workouts on the weekends? Okay, so has anyone ever felt like going into that second workout you weren't quite rehydrated yet? Yeah, it's really hard. So I think the rule of thumb is that you want to be back into, that's a really good opportunity like to weigh yourself on Saturday morning, weigh yourself on Sunday morning before you start that second run. And ideally you want to be back to at least like 1 pound of your normal body weight before starting that next workout in terms of adequate hydration, assuming that it's just like changing fluid balance between the two workouts. The other thing to be aware of, so as we're not quite getting into summer yet, but as the temperatures increase, when it comes to sodium losses and like sweating, we actually lose the most amount of sodium like right when the temperature starts to rise. So in that transition of summer is when, before our body has really acclimated, we tend to lose the most sodium. So that's when a lot of athletes are going to be at risk for hyponatremia. This actually happened to me last year. It was not very fun because I had back-to-back workouts. And so this is where you can learn from my mistake. I did a long ride on Sunday, didn't get enough sodium during my ride, drank lots of water that evening, that night, because I was actually flying to Mississippi the next day. So I got to Mississippi, I wanted to drink water because I was flying, and then I went out for my run and continued to just drink water. Well, I pretty much flushed all the sodium out of my system by that point, because it was early summer, and at that point, my body was losing a higher amount of sodium from my sweat, and so I just had like a total meltdown on that run because I think I was pushing into hyponatremia. So do be aware that sodium is going to be really important. We'll talk about sodium needs here in a few minutes. All right, so replenish muscle glycogen stores with carbohydrate. So for those of you that like specific numbers, here's a few things to think about in terms of post-workout within that 15, I'd say aiming for 15 to 30 minutes. Post-workout is ideally when you want to get in a quality source of carbohydrate. So usually in the range of 30 to 50 grams is considered ideal. But keep in mind, if you did a really significantly long run, it could be much higher than that. Ratios can be helpful for some people. These are the ratios for 4-to-1 ratio for carbohydrate protein in terms of post-endurance exercise after those long runs, 2-to-1 ratio if you did like a strength training routine. I don't really worry about the ratios as much as just making sure that I get carbohydrate and protein together.
Kristen,
Yes.
real quick question. Can you give us a great, simple example of what is 30 to 50 grams of carb, like on the if you have it on the table? Because, after we're running, we're not thinking, okay, transitioning from grams to real food. So what would be a really good example of that you might have in front of you? Or not?
I'm trying to think, I know, because I have that trouble too,
Right.
in terms of, so 15 grams of carbohydrate is typically considered one serving, so that's usually like a half cup of rice, a half cup of oatmeal, a piece of bread is about 15 grams of carbohydrate.
Okay.
So if you had like a sandwich and then a side of juice, you would have probably a good 45 grams of carbohydrate there.
Okay.
be.
I have a question.
Yes.
If you combine carbohydrates and proteins, is there any stress put on the digestive system? I read a book, Fit for Life, a long time ago, and it talked about food combining and not to combine carbohydrates with proteins because the body digests them, one with an acid and one with an alkali. And that if you eat them together, they basically neutralize it.
That's a really good question. I'm honestly not sure of the answer in respect to like stress on the body, because I've never actually looked at it from that respect.
I mean, the point in the book was simply that it took an inordinate amount of energy to digest that combination.
Right, right. Well, so what I will say to that effect is, especially post-workout when you are combining this protein carbohydrate, you're aiming for those sources that are going to be quick and easy for your body to break down because, well, for one, we often don't have much of an appetite after working hard, especially when it gets hot. And so something heavy and bulky is usually not going to sit as well in our stomach. But the easier it is to break down and digest for your body, the quicker it is going to get into your bloodstream, get to your muscles, and able to effectively do the work that we intend to. So that's like a real, like a lot of people, you know, day to day I would say like, you don't want to drink tons of juice, like you want to emphasize like actual fruits and whole fruits. But especially post-workout, like fruit can be really good in that respect because it's quick and easily absorbed. I like tart cherry juice. I also like, we drink a lot of orange juice these days. This is sort of what I'm getting at here is post-workout is when you want to have like easier to digest what's considered higher glycemic carbohydrates because those are going to actually get into your blood sugar, break down more quickly, and be easier for your muscles to utilize towards rebuilding your glycogen stores. They're also going to be not quite as filling, and again, when it comes to having an appetite post-workout, you want to stick with those foods that are more appetizing but easier for your body to break down and digest. So, okay, so I'll talk about that a little bit more after I talk about protein here. So repairing, you want to make sure you get a quality source of protein post-workout to adequately repair your muscles. What that typically looks like is about 15 to 30 grams. And honestly, this is where I couldn't tell you in terms of protein how much that looks like. A few things, whey is usually going to be the ideal post-workout recovery source or whey protein. So the best source of whey protein is usually milk and dairy products, but also a lot of meats are going to contain whey. If you're looking for like a specific amino acid, leucine is like, I'm not saying it's like the magic pill when it comes to like what you need post-workout, but leucine is going to be a really important amino acid when it comes to rebuilding and repairing, especially for us endurance athletes. Whey protein typically does contain leucine in high amounts. That's why it's considered the gold standard. Some sources of whey protein. Cottage cheese is a really good source of whey protein. Greek yogurt is actually not quite as high, but it does have whey. Milk has whey, ricotta cheese has whey, and I mean, as does a lot of different animal proteins. And then casein is more of a like slow working, slow breakdown, long acting protein. And this can be actually ideal to consume in terms of like an evening snack because it helps your body, it enhances your body's ability to really repair and restore those muscles overnight. So if you're looking for a late night snack or something to eat before bed, go for something that has casein in it. And actually most of the foods that have whey also have casein. There's a lot of overlap in that regard. So combining protein and carbs is best. Like I said, it's like the perfect marriage. In that combining them together is going to increase muscle glycogen replenishment. It helps your body to actually replenish that glycogen. It also can enhance overall glycogen storage, so meaning you have more to pull from next time around when you're doing one of those long runs. It enhances protein synthesis and repair. So likewise, like if you're doing a strength workout, I think a lot of times we think, oh, I did a run, so I need carbohydrate after. Oh, I did a strength workout, so I focus on the protein. Really, even if you're trying to rebuild and repair muscle, you need that carbohydrate as well to adequately utilize that protein for repair and enhanced repairing. And then putting those two together is really what's going to help combat reducing muscle soreness during chronic training. And again, I think that's where the timing is really key. In terms of talking about that like 15 to 30 minute window and how much you should stress on that. So if you're doing back-to-back workouts, or if you really did a hard workout, like high intensity or really long, that's when you really would, those are the two situations where you really want to stress making sure that you're getting in that fuel within a quick time period. Not to say that foods eaten outside of that don't matter. They do, they're still helping with your recovery. But the quicker you get in that fuel, that's when your body is like primed to really, like there's hormonal changes that go on, your body's really primed to like soak in that energy, soak in that nutrition, and put it to work towards repairing itself for that next workout. So you're really just getting more bang for your buck if you're really trying to stick with that time frame. Well, these are a few recovery. For some reason, my computer is not like doing my animation system. I don't know why. So, all right, recovery snacks idea. That's okay. I can talk about these things. So, a few ideas, and I want to hear you guys' ideas too, because I always learn something from different audiences. In terms of my favorite combinations, a few of my favorite combinations. This is pineapple. We're going to talk about pineapple in a few minutes, but pineapple, for one, is high glycemic, so it breaks down quick absorbing carbohydrate. Also contains this enzyme called bromelain, which helps fight inflammation, helps your body to really fight muscle soreness. So really like combining cottage cheese and pineapple is like an easy post-workout snack. Another interesting combination that probably a lot of people don't do, and I do this for like if I'm on the go, like these salmon packets, or you can do the tuna packets as well. And some tart cherry juice is a nice combination of protein, quality protein and carbohydrate. Peanut butter banana sandwich. I love a good like yogurt parfait. And of course, smoothies are always like a good choice in terms of those workout because they've got that fluid calories. You get your fluids, you get your carbohydrate, you get your protein. You can add all sorts of fun things into your smoothies. Chocolate milk's another easy one. So what are some of you guys' like go-to like recovery snacks? So I'm not talking meals, I'm just talking about like a snack.
Sardines.
I got almonds. Almonds? I want to hear your protein carbohydrate pairings though.
Greek.
Like fruit, dried nut, dried fruit.
Yeah, trail mix is really good, especially again if you're traveling, you need something that's stable at room temperature.
I bring a cooler of Greek yogurt, berries for inflammation, and granola.
Mm-hmm.
And I get a lot of grief from my people because I pull it out, but it's part of the prep for the long run.
Yeah.
The night before, I make sure I have my cooler and it's ready to go. And then I don't.
I'm not the only one that carries a cooler around.
No, and then I don't bonk on the drive home.
Yeah.
Yeah, because then you get hangry if you don't eat right away.
Like baked sweet potato wedges with sea salt and a little cinnamon.
Ooh, yeah.
Yum.
That sounds really good. I would like that with a little bit of like vanilla Greek yogurt and probably like peanut butter on top of that. It's like my ideal pairing.
So I mix, you get a kick out of this, I mix Stouffer's animal crackers and pretzels and almonds. Shake them up in a bag. Pre-made bags, I took like 4 bags of that with me a holiday later.
There you go. What else? Any other ideas or thoughts?
What about, a lot of us like to go get coffee after, right? So let's talk about the benefit of, a latte with the milk, the dairy, or the mocha, if people want to have that chocolate,
Right.
as opposed to chocolate milk.
Right.
What are your thoughts on that versus chocolate milk, or
Well, if you're getting the milk, you're getting the whey. So make sure you have like a quality milk in your latte. If it coffee's not the most hydrating, but it still is a fluid. And really, if there is a time that you want like a higher sugar food, post-workout is the time to do it. I'm not saying go indulge in a bunch of donuts, but that's really going to enhance your body's uptake of that carbohydrate. Do you just pair it with a protein source?
Yep.
It's a similar combination as chocolate.
Yeah.
All right, so recovery meal ideas. This is beef and broccoli stir fry with like quinoa. Like these really following the same pattern, but say that you're finishing up and it's time for breakfast, lunch, or dinner. Like you would probably just want to go ahead and have your meal. So I really like a good stir fry. I love soups as recovery meals in the winter because they go down pretty easy, but also like you come in freezing for a run, you just want something hot. I love a good like soba noodle soup with some tofu, with miso. What are some other ideas that you guys have? What are good recovery meals?
Scrambled eggs.
Yeah, scrambled eggs. Scrambled eggs and like some good toast and avocado. I like to throw some beans in there.
Chili.
Chili?
Scrambled eggs and a burrito. with
Yeah,
beans in
a
it.
breakfast burrito. I know, I'm trying to make you guys hungry. All right, you can think about that. All right, reinforcing. So it's really important, like I said, when we're training hard, we're putting a lot of stress on our bodies. And so we don't really think about fruits and vegetables and fats when it comes to recovery, but really these are going to be the foods that really reinforce our immune system and help fight inflammation and keep us healthy over the long term. So fruits, veggies, fats, they do play a role when it comes to recovery. And this is where I keep in mind the fact that we constantly need to be putting fuel in our body that's going to be promoting recovery day in, day out. Just as with training, consistent efforts is what is going to give you the best results in the long run. The same goes with nutrition. Okay, so reinforcing foods when it comes to your armor fuel. Antioxidants, of course, are going to be really helpful in helping your muscles to fight off soreness and repair themselves. Good sources, your leafy greens. Leafy greens are great for endurance athletes. Broccoli actually has, and of course now I can't think of the specific enzyme that's in broccoli, but it's been shown to help fight inflammation. That's why it's also really good for cancer. Tomatoes have antioxidants, lycopene. I had my pineapple. So pineapple has bromelain, which is known to fight off, it's actually similar to the effect of NSAIDs and anti-inflammatory, or what do you call those? Medications. Tart cherry juice. Who can tell me the compound in tart cherry juice that helps fight inflammation? Because now I can't think of it. It'll come to me in 5 minutes. So there's actually been a lot of studies on tart cherry juice. A lot of the college universities are implementing a tart cherry juice regimen for their athletes because the compound that's in it, now I can't think of it, darn it, that specifically helps to fight inflammation and muscle soreness. All right, so other reinforcing foods. Probiotics. So we don't think a lot in terms of gut health and how that affects our overall health and how that affects our immune health and our ability to repair and recover. But so probiotic foods are going to help keep your stomach or keep your intestines happy, keep your gut happy, and we actually generate a lot of our immune health from our gut, but it also affects general body inflammation. It also affects mental health. So probiotics are going to be a really good. I don't call them a food group, but probiotic foods are really important to include in your daily regime. So and this is something I've been personally trying to work on in terms of, okay, probiotic foods. We've got kimchi. Who's tried kimchi before? Ooh, I'm not making this spicy, but I've been trying to really develop an appetite for it. We've got a really good farmer's market vendor in Blacksburg, and that's why I've been able to. One of these days I'll make my own kimchi. This is sauerkraut. Really good source of probiotics. Where's my miso? Miso Anyone likes miso soup? I've been incorporating this into like stir fry. It gives it a nice flavor. Great source of probiotics. Of course, kombucha. Anybody making their own kombucha? Yeah, I might have to get tips from you. I just started. I just got my second batch. What else? Yogurt, of course. Quality. Look for, when it comes to yogurt, they're not all the same, so not all yogurts are going to give you the best bang for your buck. So do actually look on the carton to see if it has live active cultures within the yogurt to make sure you're getting those quality probiotics. Like cottage cheese, wherever it went, it actually has some live cultures as well. And kefir, has anyone made their own kefir? My sister's been doing that. I have to find out what she's doing. One day she just mailed like the kefir grains to us. My husband opened it and he's like, what did we just receive in the mail? Anyways, all right, so healthy fats. When it comes to healthy fats, when it comes to fat, you have two different types. You've got your saturated fats, which promote inflammation in the body. And we need to limit those in our diet just for the same reason in terms of recovery as an athlete, but also for the same reason in terms of preventing chronic disease, like promoting heart health. And then you've got your unsaturated fats, which are considered the healthy fats. These are going to actually work to reduce inflammation in your body and support immune health. So of course we've got avocados. I think everyone loves a good avocado. I think my husband's ready to take out stock in them. I didn't bring my olive oil, coconut oil, but those are sources too. You've got your salmon, or really any of your fatty fishes. So sardines. Any sardine fans here? So, I did not know my husband loves sardines as well. And I've tried it for the first time this year. I was like, you know what? For the sake of performance, I'm willing to try some new foods. I brought my Run Fast Eat Slow cookbook by Shalane Flanagan and Elise Kompecki. Really good cookbook. Check it out. They've got like a sardine omega salad in there, which is sort of like tuna salad. It's really actually quite good. Fatty fish, good source of healthy fats. What am I missing? Your nuts and seeds are also going to be good sources. Try to get a variety. Hemp seeds, well, I'm going to talk about those now. So, nuts and seeds also going to help fight inflammation. Great quality source of protein and fiber. You're getting a lot of bang for your buck when it comes to nuts and seeds. Love good walnuts. These are actually going to be one of the highest sources of omega-3 fatty acids that you can take in. Pumpkin seeds. What are pumpkin seeds a quality source of? Anyone tell me?
Iron.
Magnesium. Magnesium, yes. We got our almond butter. Trying to see what I've got here. Chia seeds, great source of healthy fats, omega-3s. Can't even see what's on my table. All right. Flaxseed. Okay, so pistachios is something that I've added new into my diet. Any pistachio fans here?
Who doesn't love pistachios?
So I just learned that pistachios actually have the highest fiber content of all the nuts. They're also 6 grams of protein per serving. And they too have compounds within them that help fight inflammation and help with reducing muscle soreness as well. They have a different, interesting taste. If you're looking for a little change in like your daily snackage, I've actually been pairing pistachios with some nice Turkish apricots for a little different snack. They tend to be a nice pairing. You can put them on pretty much anything, like any other nuts and seeds. Your chia seeds, I love putting them in my cereal, my oatmeal, some smoothies. How do you guys use chia seeds? I know there's a lot of interesting uses out there.
I'm born to run chia fresca.
So you make a chia fresca? I've done that a few times. Hasn't quite stuck yet with me. Any other uses? Oatmeal? Yeah. Just make sure you check your teeth.
I can't stand how they get stuck.
After you do that,
I mean, it really annoys me.
Check your teeth after you use those chia seeds. This middle seed, this is hemp seeds. These are also a really good source of omega-3. So if you're looking for a change, maybe if you don't like chia seeds, you can put hemp seeds in your oatmeal. And then, oh gosh, now I can't remember what's on the right side. That's another seed for you guys. I'll remember it later.
Kristen, you have a question?
Yes.
Question. I read somewhere a while ago, I think, if I remember, that roasting nuts changes maybe their good benefits. I bet a lot of people prefer the taste of a roasted nut.
Interesting. I actually haven't.
I don't know if that's accurate or not.
I will look into it. I can't answer your question.
That's fine. I'm just,
Yeah. I know that roasting nuts helps them break down better for nut butters, but I didn't hear about, yeah, I'll have to look into that. That's a very interesting question. Sometimes how we cook our foods can either enhance the nutrient value or work against it, so it is usually good to know how to best prepare them. So this is my other favorite category in terms of the use of herbs and spices for promoting recovery. And why I like this is because not only are they adding like fun flavors to your foods, but they're almost like free nutrients in that most herbs and spices are calorie free or very low calorie, but they actually have a lot of quality nutrients within them. So cinnamon, really powerful in terms of anti-inflammatory. Cinnamon also really good for stabilizing blood sugar. So if you're struggling like in the afternoon with like having like those blood sugar dips, or even like in a run, like I like to put a good amount of cinnamon in my morning oatmeal because it helps me to keep that stable energy for many hours to come. Turmeric, I know there's been a lot about turmeric in the past year. Use it, you can do turmeric powder, or curry powder is going to contain turmeric. I keep this now next to I keep it next to my salt and pepper shakers, like in its own shaker now, and I just shake it on all like, usually dinner type foods, but curcumin is the compound within turmeric that's really potent anti-inflammatory. Basil, also good anti-inflammatory, and then ginger. Ginger and garlic's not on my slides, but ginger and garlic have actually been shown to be just as effective as taking an anti-inflammatory pill or like ibuprofen or NSAIDs in terms of reducing pain, reducing inflammation. So that's something to keep in mind, because if you take ibuprofen, it's actually really harsh on your stomach. If you take ginger, it actually promotes digestion and can be really helpful in that regard. So fun ways that you can add flavor to your food, but also get some extra nutritional recovery benefit. All right, what I thought we might do is, well, maybe, who wants to go straight into race safe feeling? Through your dad, or we can have a snack.
do you want me to pass the snacks?
Yeah,
okay.
maybe we'll pass the snacks. Okay, so that's a good idea. So we'll start snacking a little bit, and then I'll start talking about race safe feeling. I brought two different snacks. The little ball things are quinoa energy balls. They have, what do they have in there? Quinoa, of course, oatmeal, chia seeds, peanut butter, raisins, chocolate chips. And then the little muffin cups are from the Eat, I always want to say Eat Fast, Run Slow. Run Fast, Eat Slow cookbook. They're called superhero muffins, which usually have carrot and zucchini, but I made them more like the carrot cake muffins, so they have pineapple instead of zucchini in them today. Alright, so I'll let them start passing those around. So when it comes to, well actually before I start talking about this, are there any other questions about like day-to-day fueling for optimizing like performance and recovery that I haven't touched on?
Can you say a little more about how you distinguish between healthy and unhealthy fats? Or you said something about that and I missed it.
Yeah, so healthy versus unhealthy fats. Your healthy fats are considered those that are unsaturated, and then your unhealthy are considered the saturated. So really the easiest way to distinguish between the two, your healthy fats tend to be liquid at room temperature. Well, when it comes to like the oils, obviously like an avocado is not going to be liquid at room temperature, but unsaturated is considered your healthier fat. And that just means like when it comes to like the carbon chain molecule, it's not fully saturated with hydrogen atoms. You want to get into the chemistry. Any other questions? Okay. Yeah. And there's more of those if we run out. All right, so so who's training for Promised Land? Oh, bless you guys.
Oh my God.
Oh, but yeah, I know how that is. Okay, I'm gonna try one of these too. All right. So my few main points that I want to make about like prepare your race day fueling strategy. And I do have a handout back here that goes into detail of like what you should be thinking about, like months in advance, the month of, the day before, that kind of thing. Great resource if you want to pick that up on your way out. But first and foremost, find what works best for you. So I'll talk about like what to eat, but there's tons of different nutrition and sports products out there. Everyone has an opinion in terms of what's best to eat during a race, what's best to drink, what best product is, what product they're all about. Find what works best for you as an individual, because we're all different in our preferences, in our style of eating, but also in our digestion and what sits best with our body. You need to be thinking about training your gut to tolerate calories and tolerate nutrition just the same way you're training your muscles. Specificity is really important when it comes to race day nutrition. So if you haven't yet thought about like what you want to eat on race day, now's the time to do that, so that when you're getting into these peak long runs, you can be practicing specifically what you want to eat and training your gut to tolerate those calories and utilize those calories appropriately. You can train your gut to like, in terms of tolerating more calories and different types of calories. It's very actually highly adaptable, which I think is sort of fascinating. And then practice. So find what you want to do, find what products you want to use, practice with them day in, day out. That's part of training your gut, but it also just helps to reinforce that fueling routine in your mind when it comes to race day, because when you get to race day, there's a lot of stuff going on, and you want it to feel like second nature in terms of implementing that fueling strategy. All right, so what to eat? I like to say have options. Of course, with aid stations, you're going to have options, but I really discourage anyone that like has one primary fuel source that they're just going to eat for like hours and hours and hours on end, because more often than not, at some point during a longer race, we decide that, wow, that gel just isn't appealing anymore, or wow, the sports drink all of a sudden is not sitting quite as well in my stomach as I thought it might. Having some options to pull from, like a few different fuel sources that you know work well for you, is going to be the best way to really navigate any kind of obstacles that you might encounter on race day, whether it be flavor fatigue or just an upset stomach or whatnot. Concentrated fluid calories can have their benefits. So this is when you like get the majority of your calories from some sort of like sports drink, or even if you did like a concentrated gel flask and washed it down with water. And that's just because in terms of like when your body is working hard, when your heart rate is high, when you're hot, you're not putting your body's not sending a lot of blood to your stomach to break down and digest foods. So when you've got like a concentrated liquid calorie, one, it tends to simplify a lot of things, but you're getting fluid calories and electrolytes together, and it's easier for your body to break down. So I always say consider that. Tailwind's of course a good example, but there's a lot of other sports drink products out there. Vary your intake of textures and flavors. This could look a number of different ways. Like say you did have a sports drink as your primary fuel source, throwing in some solid foods here or there can be really helpful. Or like if you're taking in a lot of sweet as like a primary source, throwing in some savory type foods will prevent flavor fatigue. Even if it's like, okay, I'm gonna get like a different flavor or sports drink every hour, if you're capable of like switching out bottles and stuff, that can be helpful in preventing flavor fatigue over the long haul.
What is flavor fatigue?
Flavor fatigue, thank you, that's a good question. So flavor fatigue is essentially like where your body and you just lose your appetite for like if you're taking in the same flavor hour after hour. So who's been there where like you have like your one like key fuel source and all of a sudden you just look at it and you're like, I can't eat this anymore. Yeah. It's just one of those things like if you're doing like a shorter race, like you're only taking in a little bit of calories, but if you're out there for like 5 hours, 10 hours, depending on how long you go, you're more likely to run into that like loss of appetite thing. It could also just be general loss of appetite. That's what I consider flavor fatigue as well. So when you have various flavors and textures, that also prevents flavor fatigue, but it gives you different options to like, troubleshoot. Listen to your body's cravings, like, and utilize those aid stations. So it's good to have a plan on like what you plan, like what you're going to utilize on race day, when you plan to eat this, when you plan to eat that. But the worst thing you could probably do is go into a race and stick to any kind of nutrition plan at all costs. Because those that do the like race day nutrition best are constantly like listening to their body, in tune with their body, and rolling with whatever your body is sort of telling you at a given point in terms of how much and what do you eat. I'm trying to think of a good example of that. Well, for example, in my last Ironman race that I did last October, I actually I had like my run nutrition all planned out. And as soon as I started to run, that pretty much went out the window. I should have just thrown my flask away. Because I had a concentrated flask of sports drink. I was like, okay, this will work. I'll simplify my run nutrition. Well, what I really needed when I got off the bike was a lot of electrolytes. So I was like fueling off of potato chips, and when I finally got hands on chicken broth that actually saved my run, I really didn't want anything sweet anymore. I couldn't tolerate the sweet. I tried to grab as much like savory, salty foods as possible because that's what my body was telling me at that time. In terms of how much to eat, so generally the recommendation for carbohydrate is 30 to 60 grams per hour. Now, that is really going to vary based on the individual. If you've been racing for a long time, if you've been really training your gut to tolerate more calories, you might be on the upper end of the scale on that range. If you're new to racing, you're new to eating while running, you're probably going to be closer to the lower end. The general rule of thumb is really, in terms of like prevention of GI distress, eating the least amount of calories you need to optimally sustain your efforts hour after hour. That's not saying like eat as little as possible. That's just saying like essentially more is not always better when it comes to getting in fuel during a race. So you want to find that like sweet spot of like optimal amount of calories and fluids to like sustain high level of energy over time without running your body into GI issues. And that's the biggest tip I can give anyone in terms of like how to figure this out for you. Take notes. Like when you do a run, come back, record how much you ate, how much you drank, how you felt, make observations based on that and try to tweak your plan over time. Because really, again, it's an individual thing. The more you make those observations and learn about how your body utilizes fuel, how it tolerates different types of fuel, the more you can make like an actual educated decision on how to adjust that plan moving towards race day.
Kristen,
Yes.
because I have this issue with converting grams to real life, I needed to find out calories. So for me, it was like 230 calories an hour works for me. And I read a runner shared some tips. I thought it was a great tip. They kept all the wrappers of all their gels, everything they took on their runs, and then didn't pitch them. And at the end of the run, would count up and just make sure that they had met that number that worked for them. So that's what I do before races, is make sure I have at least 230 calories an hour plus extra packed ahead.
Yeah, and that's what I do in terms of, I like try to look at my fuel ahead of time.
Yeah.
Like typically if I do a longer run or ride, I know how long I do it based on time. So, and make sure I carried an adequate amount, and then I'll just compare what I plan to eat versus what I actually took in. But yeah, saving wrappers can be really helpful. Actually, Jordan did that. I made him keep all of his wrappers after his last 100. So I could do his like post-race nutritional analysis
Right.
to see how he actually did.
Yeah.
Whatever like mechanism of keeping track works best for you. I'll sometimes use like MyFitnessPal to map it out ahead of time as well, and like do some math. In terms of fluid and electrolytes, this can be really tricky because everyone's really different in terms of like individual sweat rates and how like salty of a sweater you are. So best way to know your personal sweat rate is to test it. And so how you do that basic mechanism, and I know the one handout back there on the orange sheet, on the back it talks about fluid and electrolytes, and there's a great link on there that outlines like how to do a sweat rate test. But weigh yourself before you head out the door in the nude, weigh yourself when you come back, calculate the difference. But the hard thing about the sweat rate test is really you have to keep track of how much you drink during that session as well. So you can do some math and find out like how much did you actually lose. So they're not really good if you're doing like a 2 to 3 hour run, unless you have like a big bladder, like camelback bladder to keep track. A 60-minute run, like, you know, every couple of weeks works fine in terms of sort of getting a general idea of how heavy of a sweater you are, how much you need to replenish per hour in drink to keep up with hydration needs. Sodium is also going to be very hard too because it's very hard to test. Like you can't really easily test how much salt you lose in your sweat, but you can know whether you tend to be a salty sweater or not so much a salty sweater. So how do you know if you're a salty sweater? Who can tell me?
Speak.
What's that? Lift your arms. Lift your arms. Lift your arms. You can lift your arms. Yeah, like if you are like constantly having stinging in your eyes, or you can taste salt on your mouth, like when your sweat is dripping, or you have like salt residue on your body, that's a good sign that you're a salty sweater. Or if you just crave a lot of salt after like your runs, it's probably a good sign too. That means you're probably going to be on the higher end of this 400 to 1,000 milligram per hour range. If you aren't a salty sweater, then you just don't need quite as much sodium when it comes to your day-to-day like training and fluids. So in terms of like identifying how much is good, if you don't think based on how you're feeling during your runs that you're getting enough sodium, what I say is, again, do the math, find out how much you're actually getting in, looking at your products, and then try to bump it up by about 100 milligrams per hour. See how you feel, see how your body responds in terms of like how much fluid you actually lose, because sodium is going to help your body to hold on to the fluids you're consuming as well and maintaining hydration. And then adjust from there by like 100 milligrams each time till you find that ideal spot. There are actually like patches you can, like it's a complicated process, but you can test it. I think they have come out further now.
For the, I guess, just basic fluids, I know earlier you said, I think 16 to 24 ounces per pound loss. Would that stay the same, I guess, during the run? Or does that just apply for rehydration?
That just applies for rehydration. So this is where personal sweat rate is really important because it can range from like 20 ounces per hour of sweat loss to like 3 liters for some people. It's a really big range. And honestly, I knew I was sort of like a heavy sweater before, but I didn't really know how heavy of a sweater it was until I actually tested and realized that I'm one of those people that loses almost 60 ounces per hour while running. And so doing the sweat rate test is really the best way to know.
Do you use that as a guide during your run then, to actually try to keep up that much?
Yeah. And I will say that those of us that are heavy sweaters are gonna have a lot of trouble keeping up with that high amount of fluid intake. And really when it comes to these races and these long races, it's more about minimizing the deficit. You don't want to replace, very, very rarely do you replace, like to meet that fluid loss or even you don't want to exceed the fluid that's lost either. You don't want to overhydrate. It's really about minimizing that deficit. Yes?
I have a question. What are the first signs that you're drinking too much water?
Oh.
And do you recommend just drinking to thirst?
That's a good question. I do recommend, okay, so I recommend a balance because I think it's important to know about how much we need, but I think it's also very important that you're listening to your body and what your body's telling you in terms of how much you need to be drinking. Some people, until they really have learned to tune into your body and tune into that thirst mechanism, might want to use more of a number as a guideline. But if you're not thirsty, you don't want to be continuing to push fluids into your body and overhydrating. The biggest sign, if you start to feel sluggish, but you've been drinking and eating plenty, and actually if like your shoes feel tighter, if your hands start to swell, those are some good signs that you're overhydrated. And actually that happened to Jordan at the Bear, just because it wasn't quite as hot as the conditions he had trained in. I think he was just really nervous in the early miles, and so he kept sipping on his Camelback, even though he didn't really need that much fluid. And he just felt really crappy, really just sluggish, no energy, and realized that he was drinking way too much, not getting enough sodium, and overhydrated. Yes?
About 3 or 4 years ago, I was reading something about that, and I started just adding a pinch of salt to my water bottles. Do you recommend just having just a little bit of something in your water instead of drinking straight water the whole time?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, because, I mean, if you're going longer than an hour, then yes, that's what I should say. Because if you're only exercising for about an hour, you're going to be fine. But when you really start getting into those longer runs, the electrolyte replenishment is going to be really helpful or important because you are losing minerals and electrolytes. And, you know, another point I wanted to make, it's not just about sodium alone. Calcium, magnesium, potassium is going to be, like the products that provide all of those, especially if you're doing the 50Ks, the marathon, well, even a marathon, you're losing all those minerals and electrolytes, not just sodium, so you have to replenish all of them as well. All right, so execution. A few key points here to just wrap up for tonight. Calm your nerves is really a key thing when it comes to implementing any race day nutrition plan. I've made this mistake a couple of different times. It's not very fun. So your nerves and like if you're really nervous and anxiety and have a lot of anxiety going into a race, you're really just worked up about it, that is the quickest way to shut down your digestive tract and really not be able to tolerate much of anything during your run. So nerves, anxiety can really derail the best laid out nutrition plan very quickly. Not a fun place to be. And I've definitely worked with a few athletes where they knew what to eat, they practiced, they did well. And really the best way to like enhance their racing nutrition plan that we talked about was just giving them some exercises to stay calm, like building up to a race and on race day as well. Pacing yourself is really key as well. You can have the best nutrition plan ever, but if you go out and burn through all your carbohydrate stores, like early in the race, run up your heart rate, A, it's going to slow down digestion, so you're not going to be able to tolerate those calories quite as well. B, it's going to like burn through the glycogen a lot faster than you intend. Really key thing to keep in mind when it comes to promised land, since the first 12 miles are all uphill, it's really easy to run up your heart rate early in this race. So keep that in mind as you're working up the hill. Keep your perceived effort in control. Make sure that you are, not pacing yourself appropriately in that regard. Convenience and simplicity are key. If your plan, I say whatever your plan is, look at it, find ways to make it simpler. My favorite acronym for fueling plans, KISS, keep it simple, stupid. Like, whatever your plan is, look at it. How can I simplify this for race day? How can I make my fuel easily accessible and make my plan easy to implement on race day? That means making sure that you are comfortable grabbing fuel out of your pack or handheld or whatever it is. I don't know if I have this on here, but getting used to your equipment is probably the next slide. Think, like now's the time to think about like how you're gonna carry your fuel and be practicing and practicing and practicing with your equipment as well, because you don't want to like decide, oh, we can race, I'm gonna get this new camelback and try it out on race day, and then you're like, you don't know how to unhook the little knob thingy or access stuff and all that good stuff. Actually tried to do that for my iron. I made every mistake possible. Like I wanted to try one of those like weights fuel belts, and I was like trying to convince myself to utilize this fuel belt on race day. Finally, like, probably the night before the race this time, I just decided to go with the handheld because that's what I had practice with. Fuel early and consistently, and don't stop. It's really, really key. So as soon as the gun goes off, it's time to start fueling. Like, don't wait until an hour's pass by. I wouldn't even wait like a full 30 minutes because you're already burning through those calories. Constant, like, frequent sips and bites and sips is like the philosophy that I go by. Like, don't like try to take your food in like big chunks every hour. The more you spread it out and the more consistent you fuel throughout the race, the better your energy is going to be, but also the better your body's going to digest that fuel. So start early. Try not to stop. If you lose your appetite, try to roll with whatever your body is able to tolerate. But this last point is more like, okay, using Promised Land as a specific example, you get back to what is it, Apple Orchard Falls at the top of the mountain, and it's what, 4 or 5 miles downhill. Don't stop at that aid station. Keep eating on the way down that hill, because when you push your body for that long, you don't have that like bank to pull from when it comes to carbohydrate or fuel. And so even not fueling for 15 minutes, oh, I'm only a mile from the finish line, I should be fine. You don't really have that buffer anymore when you've been out there for hours and hours on end. Fuel until you hit the finish line is what I try to go by. I mean, don't like overdo it either in those final miles, but don't think because, oh, I've only got 3 miles left to go, I can stop eating. That's a really good way to like bonk in the final miles of a race, and that's not a fun feeling. You're like, the finish line's right there. All right, so we talked about get to know your gear. Keep your cool. So whatever race day temperature, this is more really applicable for really hot races. Keeping your body cool is going to be really key in keeping your heart rate down, but also in digestion, because if your body temperature starts to rise, then all your blood's going to go to your skin to help try to cool off your body, and even less of that blood is going to go to your stomach to digest calories. So when it comes to these really hot races, anything you can do to bring down your body temperature is also going to enhance your ability to take in calories. It also keeps that heart rate lower, so you're not burning through calories quite as quickly. So this could be wet rag, ice, any kind of cooling gear.
Promised Land has lots of stream crossings, so get wet and get your head wet. And the first year I did Promised Land, I got great advice from Scotty Mills, who's a really experienced guy. He said, this is kind of before the hydration packs ever existed, so people were wearing waist packs and handhelds, and he said, have a handheld just for water that you fill up from the streams and you dump on your head the entire race, especially going up Apple Orchard. And that was so key. Yeah. And I didn't drink, you have to remember, don't drink from this. But that was probably the best advice I had gotten. And it was totally kind of happenstance that I got it. So
when it comes to these hot conditions, like you want to use your water 2 ways, and you want to do both, not one or the other. One set of water for going over your head, throwing over your body to keep cool, another set of water to go in your body. One year I watched the Ironman World Championships, and there was a lot of athletes that they had like these big like trash cans full of ice water, and there were some athletes that were just like dunking their bodies in the water, but then they weren't drinking any water. Well, that's not going to help you. Both are going to be key. My favorite thing to do, like the races that hand out the ice, I just start throwing them down my shirt in terms of like keeping cool. It really helps. Medicate appropriately, so keep in mind that those that like to carry ibuprofen or any kind of medication, etc., those can be really harsh in the GI tract, and it's a really quick and easy way to run into digestional issues. So if you are going to use them, do keep in mind that they break down like the line in GI tract. You don't want to overuse ibuprofen for that reason or other medications. They can also alter your electrolyte, the way that your kidneys process sodium and electrolytes. So be careful in that regard as well. Rolling with the challenges. So more often than not, things are not going to go according to plan. So I like to say, have an A plan, have a B plan, have a C plan. Know and think about what you're going to do when different nutritional challenges arise. Because more often than not, something's going to come up, and those that do the best are the ones that know how to appropriately respond. And sometimes that can be not just for optimizing performance, but also just for your health and safety. And so my example of this, where like I said, I made every mistake in the book, I actually also pushed myself in the hyponatremia in my last Ironman. Lost too much sodium, lost too much fluids on the bike, got to the run, and like it was just this downhill spiral. And luckily I recognized the symptoms that like my hands were swelling, I was nauseated, like feeling like having trouble, like very weak. And I recognized that I needed sodium and like ASAP if like I wanted to finish my race. And so I was able to like navigate that challenge, get some sodium, and actually my last 10K was the fastest in the race somehow. So really knowing like how to respond when these different nutritional challenges come up is going to be really key in the execution part. And that's where I think listening to your body is really going to be the end, like give you the best information in terms of like what to eat, what to drink, how much, when, etc. It's really just making sure that we're taking the time to listen to it and knowing like what those different signs and signals are on race day. Because it's really easy, because I've been there as well, to get caught up in the race and forget to eat, forget to drink, forget that, oh, I need calories to sustain myself for this long distance. So, you know, you get caught up in the competition part, or you just get caught in the flow of the moment. And we got to remember to listen to our body, making sure that we're taking care of those little needs throughout the race, throughout the process, to get to the finish line most quickly. All right, so that's what I have for you guys.
Let's say I was just thinking, I mean, there's so much here, right?
Well, I could talk for hours.
Right. So why don't we take some, it's 8:22, why don't we cut off at 8:30?
Okay.
Questions, but you'll be here.
Yeah.
And there's lots of stuff in the back too to look at and whatever.
Yeah, so if you have questions now, I'll take those.
Yeah, let's do that.
Like, we can like have a formal question and then break, like you can ask me after. And also like feel free to pick up my business card, email me a question, that's totally fine after. Yes.
So you said that NSAIDs can alter how your body processes electrolytes?
Yes.
Is that just super individual, or is it kind of directional? Is it like I take 2 ibuprofen and then I need to take more sodium, or I take 2 ibuprofen and I need to stop?
It is sort of individual in terms of how sensitive our bodies are to like the use of NSAIDs. And actually caffeine has a similar effect, which is important to note in terms of utilization of caffeinated products. They can both, like the NSAIDs can affect your body's reabsorption of sodium in the kidneys, as can caffeine. So which means it tends to increase our excretion of sodium, like when we're urinating throughout these longer races, increasing our losses. But in general, it affects how effectively your kidney like processes and holds on and maintains fluid balance.
Okay.
Yes.
How do you compare the difference between a hyponatremia? How do you say that?
Hyponatremia.
Yeah.
So too little and too much sodium.
And that compared to low sugar.
Right. Oh, low sugar. That's where I think think it's important to just maintain a big picture perspective of like what you've been doing and how you've been feeling. So, like if you've been eating adequate calories and you're feeling really sluggish and weak and fatigued, but you haven't been taking in a lot of sodium, then that's a good sign that it's a sodium issue versus the opposite. So you have to put it in perspective of what you've actually been consuming, if that makes sense.
The low sugar crash seems to come on pretty rapidly.
Yeah. The hyponatremia the hyponatremia tends to build over time. But it can come on pretty quickly too, and that's where it's like everyone's a little bit different.
So there's a lot of talk about, as endurance athletes, that we want to be better fat burners than carbohydrate burners, and I think even on Facebook today, Mark Gazella had an article about fat burning and better butter burners.
Oh yeah, it's a big thing right now.
Exactly. So I've been trying to train that way and try to be a better fat burner. But what can I eat that will help me be a better fat burner than?
Okay, so I'm glad you mentioned that because there's a lot of talk about like how to increase our ability to burn fat during like these long runs, utilize fat for fuel. And so a big trend is also just to like go into like runs fasted, like not taking carbohydrate, forcing our body to like utilize fat. So the thing I can say about that is there has been research to support that, but the key thing is if you're going to do like a fasted workout is the application needs to be really specific. So it's not going to be a good idea if you have a really high intensity run or you're trying to get a lot of quality out of that run, because carbohydrate is where you get the power and the high intensity, like that's what your body is utilizing for fuel at those higher intensities. What I tend to see with a lot of athletes is there's a lot of like adjustments being made to like their fueling regimens and like training low and racing high kind of deal to optimize fat burning, but then they're eating whatever they want throughout the day when, okay, what we eat throughout the day, which is like 90% of the time versus like running 10%, can actually have a big impact on how you utilize different fuels as well, which I think is what your question is. So really to like optimize metabolic efficiency and your body's ability to like utilize fat for fuel, you want to keep as stable as blood sugar level as possible throughout the day, and that's a consistent effort over time. And the best way to do that, pairing protein, carbohydrate, and fat. Protein, fiber, and fat at every meal and snack is going to give you the best like blood sugar curve in terms of most stable energy, and really teach your body how to effectively utilize your internal energy storage, your fat storage for fuel as part of the equation. But we also have to realize fat is only one part of the equation. It doesn't, like, when you have the lower intensities, yes, you're going to be utilizing lipids and fat as a higher, like, to a higher extent as an energy source. But as your intensity rises up, as you are working harder, your body, no matter what, is going to be dependent on carbohydrates as a fuel source because it needs that oxygen. Because fat needs oxygen to break down. So the harder you're working, the less oxygen. The other key thing to realize is that when we're building endurance over time, our body naturally has processes and like is adapting to more effectively use fat for fuel without even making any dietary changes. A lot of people don't realize that. Like as you're building that endurance capacity, you're building capillaries, you're actually building your ability to break down fat as well. And your body is naturally adapting to that. Hopefully, it's a very complicated subject, so hopefully that answered your question in a nutshell. Other questions?
Any other questions? One thing I want to say is, you mentioned Shalane Flanagan's cookbook.
Yeah.
Run Fast, Eat Slow, which you have a copy of back there. And my friends know I've made probably 10, 15 recipes from there. There's not a bad recipe. It's a phenomenal book, and it's so no nonsense. And she addresses just basic nutritional stuff for athletes. So it's a great book, and you have that copy.
I have a few. I have like 4 different nutrition, fueling type books. Some are recipe books or some are just about nutrition for athletes. So you can check those out. I think they're really great resources. That's why I brought them to share. I did bring some handouts that summarize some of the information we talked about today. But if you're looking for more information, get on this is my plug for my website, because I have a lot of articles and blog posts on my website that are specific for fueling for endurance athletes. I have some more handouts that you can go and download as well. So go check that out as another resource. Feel free to send me a question at any time, because I'm sort of like a nerd when it comes to stuff. I love doing questions when it comes to sports nutrition. If you want me to do your math video, I'll probably do it, because I'm a nerd about that as well. So thank you for having me to talk about that.